Well, right around 1995 was the OJ case,
Yeah.
which was led by Johnny Cochran. When this happened and you saw that OJ was found not guilty, what did you think as a lawyer?
I thought, as a lawyer, I thought, and I'm glad you distinguished what I thought as a lawyer. As a lawyer, I thought that was the right verdict. Maybe not factually the right outcome. Maybe not justice for the victims, but it was the right verdict. Because if you understood that case and understood what happened in that case, and I really followed it with a critical eye, not advocating for one side or the other. As a matter of fact, I was still a prosecutor at that time. You had evidence that was tampered with. Clearly, that was proven. I mean, 2 weeks after the crime scene occurred, there was a blood drop on a gate in the back that was allegedly Simpson's that wasn't there in the first day of the crime scene. There's a video of that fence, and there's no blood drop. 2 weeks later, there's a blood drop. Okay, I don't think we have to. It's not a leap of faith to understand what happened there. Then you had the lead detective in this case, the guy who recovered the critical evidence, the gloves at Rockingham, the gloves at the scene, who recovered bloody socks, who found blood in the Bronco, all those things. You had a guy named Mark Furman, who was the key to this case. If Furman planted evidence, the case was infirm and had to be, based on a reasonable doubt, had to be an acquittal. You had a guy who was the lead detective who was clearly a racist, who had used derogatory terms in the past, and actually sued Los Angeles and the PD for a disability before the Simpson trial because he was unable to be rational when it came to black people. He would want to hurt them. He'd want to kick them. He didn't want to treat them properly. He literally sued because he said, I'm disabled because I can't coexist with these people. I mean, talk about like O.J. Simpson being delivered a gem. And then he's asked on cross-examination by Athley Bailey, did you ever use the N-word before? This is now a cop. You have 8 black jurors. You're on the heels of Rodney King in Los Angeles, less than 2 years after that. So that city was a powder keg, right? You have a detective being asked those questions because the defense was alleging there's a racial sort of motivation. This guy planted evidence. And he said no. And they said, if anyone came in here and said that, would they be lying? He said yes. Well, not only did someone come in and say it, they wound up getting in possession of these tapes where Furman was being interviewed by someone who was going to produce a film or something, and he could repeatedly use the N-word in a most derogatory, offensive fashion. So he was then recalled by the defense, and what he did was mind-boggling. And this I blame the prosecution for also, because they didn't say, look, he did this, he lied about this, it doesn't affect what happened in the investigation in this case. Instead, the prosecution wouldn't even speak to him, and they basically left him out to dry. And so his lawyer properly advised him, take the fifth on everything. So he took the fifth on whether he ever used the N-word before when he was recalled. I mean, think of this, the lead detective taking the Fifth Amendment in front of a jury. But here's where the case ended. And one of the jurors actually said this. The case ended when they said, Detective Furman, did you plant or fabricate any evidence in the O.J. Simpson investigation? And he said, on the advice of counsel, I take the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination. Boom, game, set, and match. Over. How can you, beyond a reasonable doubt, make a conviction at that point? When the lead detective is taking the Fifth Amendment, which a normal person means that he's refused to answer because he would incriminate himself, the answer to that means, yes, I did plant evidence in this case. Yes, I did manipulate evidence. How could you convict on that? You can't. And that was the end of that case. And so people are outraged by it, and I understand, but they should be outraged at the fact that, Mark Furman gave the defense a sledgehammer, to sort of pound the grape in. And that's why that was the right verdict. The civil case was also the right verdict, right? The standard is much lower. It's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the highest standard our law permits. It's not clear and convincing evidence, where it's the second highest standard, where you could take away a child from a parent with clear and convincing evidence. Clear and convincing evidence is not enough to get a conviction in a criminal matter. In a civil case, where we're talking about money and property, things of that importance, it's mere preponderance of the evidence, Vlad. It's 51%. So, of course, with that evidence, with Furman and all, you could still clearly come to a conclusion that, yes, he's liable by a mere preponderance of the evidence. It doesn't work in a criminal case where the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a much higher standard. So, that was a captivating case. It was a joke of a case. I think it was not a good case for the criminal justice system or our system of justice. People saw a judge who had lost control of that courtroom. Just the whole thing was a bad example of how our system's supposed to work. But it was the O.J. trial.
Well, the reason why I mention it is because after Johnny Cochran won the O.J. trial, he started a firm in New York. And you started working with this firm?
Not so much with his firm, with Johnny. A lot of those lawyers became good friends of mine. Barry Scheck is a close friend of mine, someone I respect immensely. Barry and I have done work together, sometimes on the opposite sides of the fence, but Barry's one of the greatest lawyers, and a terrific human being. Bob Shapiro and I got to know each other in L.A. As a matter of fact, I brought him into the A$AP Rocky case on the civil end. Bob is a spectacular human being also. Johnny, when he came to New York, and I was a young lawyer just out of the prosecutor's office, and I was doing some defense cases, and I had some early successes that were well-publicized successes in the press with trials. Someone alerted Johnny to me and what I was doing. I was representing some rappers like the Onyx guy, Sticky Fingers, Rakim, the great legendary, Rakim and Eric, the great rapper who my last client was named after, literally, Rakim Mayers, right? So it was I was making a little bit of a name for myself, and so one day I got a call and I pick it up. It's Johnny Cochran at my office. I'm like, now this was when Johnny Cochran was a demigod, like he was a celebrity to the highest degree, right? It was only 3 years after OJ. I think it was 98 or so, 99, but around there. But anyway, long story short is he calls me and says, look, I heard some great things about you. I'd love to meet with you. And I'm thinking, yeah, okay, sure, it's Johnny Cochran. I'm thinking it's my friend or something like that. I said, oh, great, okay, no problem. He goes, could you come to my office? I'm downtown. I think it was the Woolworth building. And I said, yeah, I will. Again, I'm thinking I'm going to walk in there and they're going to be like, who are you? You don't have an appointment, Mr. Cochran. I did. He met me and we spoke, and he was just the most gracious individual because he had already established himself at that point. I was up and coming. He took me under his wing for 3 years. He became a friend and a mentor, and he sent me some work. I didn't ever work with the Cochran firm. That was a civil PI firm. I had my own firm, and my autonomy is sort of important to me. I didn't need to march the beat of my own drummer. I'm not a very good employee, but we never even discussed that. That wasn't even really what we wanted to do. He wanted to just do work with me and work on cases together. And he sent me a lot of criminal cases because he stopped doing criminal cases at that point. We then just sort of hit it off. We'd have, dinner and lunches often. And he became like a mentor, like a family member to me. Like I loved him. And we then just one day we'd sit down and we'd go in the conference room, we'd start writing summation points on proof beyond a reasonable doubt. What I used in the A$AP Rocky trial, I took out of the closet and dusted off. Johnny and I had written that part of the beyond a reasonable doubt thing I did at the end of my summation. I have one that I've been doing for 20 plus years. I have 120 jury trials, Vlad. My normal beyond reasonable doubt standard thing I do in the beginning. This case called for really an emphasis on proof beyond a reasonable doubt. I busted out the one that Johnny and I had done together, and I threw it in the end of the summation. So powerful. It was so powerful. Even my partner was like, Chad, who's been with me for 24 years. And Chad said, at first he was like, we don't need it again. We already have our beyond reasonable doubt. I said, Chad, I'm doing the summation. I'm doing this. I feel it. I need to really hit this twice and hit it hard because my summation was over 5 hours. So, what I said in the first 30 minutes, I sort of think needed bad repeating at the end, but it was done differently. It was the Johnny and I thing. And it was beautiful. And I swear I felt him standing next to me at that podium when I was doing that part of the summation. And, it was moving, considering it was the same floor that the OJ trial was in that trial. It was the court. He was in Department 103. I was in Department 102, literally across the hall from each other. And so there was a part of me that I took him up there with me. And he was just, I can't explain how good of a guy he was. I mean, he had the ability to be he was a superstar. And I've seen a lot of people when they get so big, they sort of forget about where they come from. They forget to be humble. They forget to be nice. They forget to be, I learned a lot from him, including that. And so, it was a really great honor to work with him.
I mean, out of all the times you guys hung out, had dinner, lunch, drinks, whatever, did you ever ask him if OJ did it?
I would have my last lunch or dinner with him. Of course, I didn't ask him that. I didn't ask him that. Of course, we would have gotten into a debate, but we did on occasion talk about the trial. We talked about his summation there. I do some things that he did. I borrowed from him from that summation on many things. I sort of put it into my own words. We talked about the brilliance of it. We talked about Chris Darden's in-court demonstration about the bloody glove and how insane that was, and how that really was the watershed moment in the case for at least Johnny thought. We talked about how he prepares. We talked about his family, everything, my family, but it was never really like, so come on, Johnny, come on. He did it, right? Because I don't know if he knew that. I don't know if he believed it or thought it. I mean, even Bob Shapiro, who was a great guy and, maybe didn't see eye to eye with Cochran, he said to me, I don't think he did it. I'm like, Bob, I thought you didn't drink. You said you didn't drink. And he's like, no, I don't drink. I'm like, what did you say? But Barry Scheck, the same thing. Once you start representing someone in something like this, if you don't believe, it's going to be obvious. It's going to be obvious to the people you're trying to convince. And so you have to believe, and I believe they believed.